name is Steve Schwartz. I run the LSAT blog. I also host the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel and podcast. Been teaching the LSAT for about 15 years now. But tonight we're not going to talk about the LSAT. We're going to talk about the law school admission side of things, specifically choosing a law school and deciding whether to go. And to assist me in that, I have my good friend, Andy Brink, author of Most Law School Advice is BS. So Andy, I want to invite you just to introduce yourself, share a little bit about your background and what led you to write the book.
Yeah, so my name's Andy Brink. I'm a practicing attorney down in Houston, Texas. Let's see, what led me to write the book? I graduated from law school about 10 years ago from Vanderbilt University Law School. And like most people who are going to law school, when I was choosing whether to go to law school, which law school to go to, and then ultimately what to do once I got to law school, there were only a couple resources out there that in book form. There were no podcasts or anything like this. And my experience as a law student at Vanderbilt, and then my experience on the market after law school, led me to believe that most, if not all, of that material that was out there for law school applicants and for law students is wrong. And so I wrote Most Law School Advice is BS. I self-published it, and it seems to be getting a good following with people who really resonate with some of the ideas that are, if not completely different from those found like in Law School Confidential or other books like that, are very different. And so I like to think that it's like a very honest take on law school, and one that relieves a lot of pressure from people. And my story, it was all about, like, I had to overcome a low LSAT score, and I boosted my score and got scholarship offers. And so I'm really big on scholarship offers. I had horrible grades during my first year of law school. So it talks about the importance of grades and all that stuff. But from beginning to end, it's a good resource for, I think the best resource for how to decide whether you should go to law school, how to pick one once you decide that. And then once you get into law school, what the hell do you do with those 3 years?
Right. So you kind of cover every stage of the journey once the person has gotten their LSAT score and they're just choosing, where do I apply? Where do I go? And of course, considering whether to go at all even. So I thought,
that's correct.
I thought since so much of your book is focused on choosing a law school, we could start there. And then in the process of discussing the factors that one should consider, we could then also look a little bit at just deciding to go right now in this time during COVID-19, when things are a little bit up in the air.
Right.
So I think the biggest thing that came to mind for me when reading your book was just how well you dismantle the idea of prestige. I feel like prestige is such a big factor in the law school admission process for so many applicants. It's big in our culture, the US News rankings. People are often choosing the highest ranked school possible, even if one just a little bit lower down would offer significant scholarship money.
Right.
So I'm hoping you could do a little bit just right now for us to dispel the myth of prestige. Why is prestige not as big a deal as people make it out to be?
Okay, I will do that. I will say, if anyone who hears this, you want more, I wrote a 190-page book on it. So I can't, it's hard for me sometimes there's a lot of moving parts going on with the US News and World Rankings, with all the biases that we often all bring to our decision on where to go for law school. And to be honest, I was victim of that. I went to one of the higher ranked law schools that I got admitted into. So here is how I would say why I believe that there's a myth of law school prestige. Law schools are very, very, very bad at preparing you to find a job after you graduate. They are very bad at preparing you for what your life is going to look like after you pass the bar exam. Because they are all of them, Harvard, Yale, Vanderbilt, anyone you want to go to, because they are all so bad at preparing students for what comes after graduation, there's really little to any differentiation once these kids get, once you graduate and once you take the bar exam, there's very little differentiation between a kid who went to Harvard, a kid who went to Vanderbilt, and a kid who went to some lower ranked law school. And so this is law schools. This is the fault of law school. But the real thing, I guess the crux of the issue, and I'm stumbling a little bit as I say it, is if you know how to look for jobs And I teach you how to do this in the book. If you know how to network with local attorneys, if you know how to create opportunities on the open market for yourself, there is no place you won't need the prestige of a law school to get you interviews, to get you opportunities. And I write about that in the book, how I say that the reputations of law schools will never create one single opportunity for you. I don't care whether you go to Harvard. I don't care whether you go to Vanderbilt like I did. Once you know as a law student how to spend your time and how to network with local attorneys in local county courthouses and local bar association meetings, that negates anything that you like, any pre-packaged prestige weight that your law school would carry. So the problem is that law schools are not going to teach you that, and that's why I wrote this book. I wrote the book to teach law students how to network with local attorneys. I wrote the book to teach law students how to go out into the community and find opportunities for themselves rather than relying on the prestige of their law school. The other factor that I think is very important is when you're talking about going to one of the more prestigious law schools, the higher up you go in the rankings, the higher up your tuition payments are going to be. And I am in this job climate and in any job climate, I am really, really big on students or law school applicants taking the biggest deductions they can find, the biggest scholarships they can find, the biggest discounts. There just aren't that many jobs out there that are going to eliminate your debt. And I have family members who are dealing with this right now, but there are not that many jobs out there that are going to finance you so that you can eliminate your debt in 5 or 10 years. And so I'm just with the paucity of good information out there on how to actually find a job that you like. And then that's what I read about in the book. And then also with the bleak job opportunities out there, just in the legal market that's oversaturated. But the good thing is I cover all this in the book. I cover, how to talk to local attorneys. I cover how to, choose a law school based on where you want to live in the country and where you get the biggest deductions. So it's a really, really complicated issue, and I stumbled over it a lot. But the crux of the matter is, the U.S. News and World Report rankings will have no impact on your life as a lawyer or as a law student. And so I think you should not pay attention to them at all.
So you're saying that you went to Vanderbilt.
I did.
You went to Vanderbilt, and despite choosing the school with the higher ranking, the bigger name, in your experience, it still didn't open that many doors, and you still had to develop all of these networking capabilities, all these networking skills.
I have to be honest and say, I go to therapy and my therapist and I talk about blind spots. I can't speak for every person that ever saw my resume, and to say whether or not I went to Vanderbilt had any play in their decision to offer me a job or to not offer me a job or whatever. But the opportunities that I made them for myself, and I did them through just being a nice person. It's not rocket science. It's sending thank you notes. It's being polite. It's being well spoken. It's having researched, what you're there to interview for. So I don't believe that because all that going to a higher ranked law school does is show that you did good on your LSAT. And practicing attorneys just don't care how well you did on your LSAT. They care about, can you help them with the job they're doing? Can you make their firm or their company more money? Are you going to be a pain in the ass to work with? So those are the only things. So whereas the law school myth of prestige and all this, it kind of is its own little world. And then once you get out in the real world where there's real law firms and there's real jobs and there's real rent payments to be due and there's real kids and there's real stress, though the prestige of your law school it pales and it shrinks with every further moment you step foot out of law school. So I can't say that, because I am not the people that hired me. I can't say whether that impacted, but I would say if it did, it probably plays into the fact that I'm, a decently smart person, well-spoken, and a polite person. So it all kind of plays together. But I just do not think with the premium on the sticker price that you have to pay for a high-ranked law school that it makes any sense to go to one. And I'm on the record, unfortunately, as saying I probably made the wrong choice in law school. I would have gone to the University of Alabama on a full ride scholarship. I hope my law school never hears this, but that's in full candor.
Right. So you're saying that what matters much less than the name on your resume is just your seeking opportunities, beating the pavement, your networking, doing the proper follow-ups, that could have more of an impact than simply the name of the school.
What I'm so confused about is why law schools don't start this process day one of 1L, why they don't take all their students to a local courthouse and sit them down and say, this is a jury trial, this is a judge, this is a criminal docket, this is a civil docket. Instead, they teach you for 3 years all of this book material, and then you graduate and you got to go take a bar exam, and then you're completely on your own. And I just don't understand why job acquisition and why personal development is not taught at law schools. And it wasn't taught at mine. No one really knows what's going on in that regard.
Yeah, it's much more theoretical, and they've gotten a lot more criticism for that in recent years as the job market has changed with the 2008 recession, and now it's going to be even more important all over again because of this new economic situation we're in, resulting from COVID-19. So you mentioned that law schools should sit them down and show them what they really need to know in the real world. And just based on your general experience, have you noticed any law schools in particular doing this well, especially as examples that others should aspire to? If not, what should applicants be looking for in a school?
Okay. Great question. Long, hard answer. I don't have enough information on every single law school out there to know which ones are better than others. I know there are some that are better than others. What I would, if someone were looking me in the eye and said, what factors, how do I choose? Okay. So my 2 factors that I hearken on the book, go where you get a full scholarship and go to law school in an area of the country that you want to live so that you can, if you want to live in New York, go to a law school in New York. Don't go to LA. It's hard to network in New York from LA. But, after you get past that, say you had a couple different schools in New York that gave you a full scholarship, I would want to know what schools are going to help me prepare for the bar exam and what schools are really, really, really making an effort on clinics and getting outside the classroom and getting into courtrooms and getting in law firms. I want to spend as little time in law school in a classroom as I can. That's what I would do if I had my chance to do it over again. So go where you get the biggest scholarship in an area of the country where you want to live and network after you graduate and pass the bar. And then go to a school that you can sniff this out. Like there's one in Texas called the University of North Texas, and they have a 3-semester capstone program for how to take the bar exam because they're that focused on, if you don't pass this bar exam, you might never get a chance to practice. So I would go to a school that is going to help you pass the bar exam, and I would go to a school that admits that the right place for you to be as a law student is in county courthouses, in law firms, and in like meeting with local attorneys at bar association meetings. So one that emphasizes practice over procedure, or practice over theoretical knowledge. Yeah.
So how would somebody, it's great if a school has those features, obviously, if they have those programs.
Yeah.
But as an applicant, if you have never visited the school, if you don't know anybody at the school, and now with COVID-19, you can't even visit schools, you're more reliant on random people on internet forums or the school's website. How is an applicant supposed to navigate all of that? What would you do if you were in this position now?
Yep. Great question. I'm an extrovert, and so it's easy for me to approach people. So I know this is hard for people to do. Say you had 3 law schools you're choosing from, X, Y, and Z, and you wanted to know, and everything else is even in your decision. You got to talk to students who are 1Ls, 2Ls, and 3Ls at that law school. You got to find a way to get in touch with people who go there. You got to get in touch with people who are 1Ls, because that's going to teach you what that first year is going to be like. Second year is when people are really involved with journals and stuff, but the 3Ls are going to be the ones who are really the most honest. So I would say if you're choosing between, if you want to know about a tenor of a school, ask the 3Ls that have been there for 3 years. They're going to give you the no BS answer. They're already out the door. They're going to give you the no BS answer, whether it's good or bad. I would have done it. Anybody would have done it. So you got to go. Law schools often make people's email addresses public sometimes, like class lists or whatever, but just be really clever. Find a way to find 3Ls at these law schools, shoot them an email. I guarantee you half of them are going to answer you. They're going to be really polite and want to help you.
Yeah, that's a great idea. They have much less to lose because they're already, as you said, 1 foot out the door, and
Yep.
they might be more critical because they have more experience at the school as well.
Yeah, the 3Ls are going to be the most honest. The 1Ls are still kind of, in the haze of everything. 2Ls are buried under a lot of work, but 3Ls, they see the picture. They're going to give you an honest take of what a law school looks like from the inside. And again, let me emphasize too, though, I think decisions, it's not always the case, but I think if you use the first two of my principles and you go where you get the biggest scholarship in an area of the country that you want to work after you graduate, that's gonna really narrow down your choices. And so you're only going to be dealing with 2 or 3 law schools at the most. So it's kind of a manageable thing, and I would say if you wanted to meet 1 or 2 or 3 people at each one of these law schools online, of course, that's a great starting point. And I guarantee you, no one else is doing this. Like no one else knows this trick. So you're gonna corner the market on this good information.
Well, it takes a lot of initiative. I mean, I'm imagining walking through this, I would search for Facebook groups of X law school class of 2020 because they're graduating right now in a couple weeks if they haven't already practically. Yep. And then maybe LinkedIn. If you do like site:linkedin.com, then X law school class of 2020, you'll find people that way too.
You're right.
It takes a lot of initiative, yeah.
I think the Facebook group would be the best way. And if you could even find a way to post on the group, you may, to the group, you may get 200 people trying to help you. You know what I mean? So I think the law school application process is a really lonely, frustrating thing. But like you're like 2 steps removed at all points from a lot of good people and a lot of good information about the school. So.
Nice. Awesome. That's great, solid advice. Now, you mentioned looking at schools where you have high scholarships and large scholarships, and you also want to live in that area of the country.
That's correct.
Now, how do those two things relate, or how do they compete against each other? Let's say, lower scholarship, but geographic positive, larger scholarship farther away. How do you weigh those two against each other?
Again, a great question. I talk about it a little bit in the book. If I had a gun to my head, I would say that with the internet, it's easier now to network from afar than it's ever been. And so I would say you go to the school with the biggest deduction. The education you get is going to be the same at both places. And you can overcome it. I became a mentor to a kid who was choosing between, he wanted to work in New York and he was choosing between Boston University and the University of Florida. University of Florida is going to give him a full ride. Boston's not going to give him any money. I was like, that's an easy decision, man. You go where you get the full ride, and I can work with you. And I do work with these kids, with these students, how you can network from afar. It's a lot easier to network from afar and make up that gap than it would be to take out loans. There's just no point with the resources that are out there, Steve, with guys like you who are helping people on the LSAT, and with the fact that law schools don't care about how many times you took the LSAT or what your first or second test score was. There's just really no excuse. Everyone out there can boost their LSAT score and get a scholarship to a law school that could change their life. I mean, going to law school for free or mostly free is life changing. I mean, that's life empowering. So that's the proxy. I will always tell someone to take the bigger amount of money, because I can teach them how to network from Florida to go back to New York. You're just going to have to get really good at emails and really good at phone calls and really good at, research, but it can be done. And the good thing is you got 3 years to do it, versus if you go to the school with the smaller scholarship, you're already shooting yourself in the foot because you owe more money and you got to find a job that pays you more money. And that's just never a good spot to be in.
Yeah, the scholarship, the reduced debt really helps you keep your options open. And as you said, LSAT score is probably the biggest factor in getting scholarship money. If your numbers on the LSAT are above that school's medians, then they want to take you because that'll help them raise their own status in the rankings.
That's correct.
But what else could somebody do as an applicant if, let's say, they're done with the LSAT already and the GPA is already fixed? Is there anything applicants could do at that point to potentially get larger scholarships in terms of negotiating them perhaps, or any way they could strengthen their application after the fact?
Yeah, no, I got to touch on one thing and real quick and say, it doesn't, your LSAT, if you feel like it's over, it might not be over. So I took my LSAT in December of 2006 and I got a 157. Less than 2 months later, I took it in February. I just changed one thing about my study and I studied a lot harder. I got 11 points higher. So a lot can happen. You know this, a lot can happen in 2 months, in 4 months, and even in 1 month. And so I counsel kids all the time, like, keep trying, keep throwing everything you got at the LSAT, because the way that law school is related to me with the 157 and the way they related to me with the 168, you can't even describe it. They were falling over themselves to give me, a big scholarship money. But let's say you're done. Let's say you've taken it 3 times. You can't do it anymore. It's March 1st. I would do this. I would get as many people as I could to write me a letter of recommendation. So I've seen this work for people when they're not admitted. I helped someone get into Vanderbilt. I wrote her a letter of recommendation, a nice one, like a very sweet letter of recommendation. So at that point, I think the question what you're getting at is when it's go time for law schools and they're having people that they have a lot of options of who they can choose to move off the wait list, who they can offer more scholarship money to. And I think that if you can shine, if you can corner the market, if you can be bold and be new and be creative, then they're going to notice that there's something different about you, because all they have are a stack of resumes and a stack of LSAT scores and a stack of college GPA. But if you can make yourself shine as a person, and I think the best way to do that is to let other people talk for you. And so that's why I would say I would go, if I was trying to get more money, and I always say ask for more money. I always say ask for more money. Send them somewhere you got in that's higher in the rankings. I don't like the rankings at all, but use the rankings to your benefit. If you got in at Vanderbilt and you want to get them at a full ride, send them your letter of applicant. Send them your letter of acceptance to like Michigan or Duke. So send them something that shows that you're a highly desired commodity. But also too, the soft skill, the other way to approach this is I would flood them with letters of recommendations from peers, from professors, and from people in my community that know who I am. You just got to find a way to separate yourself from the pack. And I also think be tenacious. Like if you want 10,000 more scholarship dollars, ask for 10,000 more scholarship dollars. Like be honest.
I like that a lot. Obviously, having another compelling offer is a good way to make yourself more desirable and make them think they could actually lose you. So they need to give you more money in order to woo you back to their side.
It happened to me. I got in at Vanderbilt at a half scholarship. I got in at Georgetown. I sent them my letter of acceptance to Georgetown, and they gave me $6,000 more a year. Now, does that make a difference like 20 years down the road? No, but it's nice.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking another competing offer could be simply the option to not go to law school at all right now. And law schools are really facing this full force with the quarantine situation, stay at home, recession and such. And LSAC, the folks who write the LSAT questions, they've been holding a series of webinars, both about the new online lsat-flex, but also where law school admission officers have the chance to try and convince applicants why they should go now. And obviously they have a bias there, but they also make some compelling points. And so I'm wondering what you might tell folks who are potentially going to law school this fall, facing a potentially very uncertain situation. Will law school be online? Will it be in person with extreme social distancing measures? If it were online or did have the extreme social distancing with half empty classrooms, everybody wearing masks, extracurriculars maybe dialed down a bit, would that matter in your view?
That's going to be, I would never want to, that's a good question. And that's going to be so when we were talking about what you were going to ask me, I said, this is all going to be dependent on city, state, county, what the president does. I mean, so much of this is unknown. And so me and my wife look at each other every night and we're like, we feel differently about the virus than we did the day before because we get new information and so I think everyone needs to give themselves, first of all, a measure of grace. Like, this is a tough decision. There's really no right or wrong outside of, my factors that I list in the book, but there's really no right or wrong if you're feeling hesitant to go to law school or to go. What you just said is news to me. I wouldn't trust one word that a law school, admissions team is telling me why I should go to law school. That's like McDonald's trying to convince you that that's advertisement. Of course, they need that because their bottom lines are being threatened. So I would say don't listen to people on the inside. But I would say talk to the schools or I didn't mean it like that, but I'm saying don't take as gospel what they say. But I would talk to the schools, and the closer we get to enrollment and the closer you get to your decision deadline day, really stop and think what that school is thinking things are going to be like. It might be different for a school up in New York than it would be for down in Texas, because Texas just opened up. I went back to work today. Me and my wife went back to work today. And in New York, it might not be like that. So I think it's a region of the country. But I will say this, I am of the opinion that it's fine for most people to pause on going to law school. Like, just if you're feeling hesitant about it, don't go. Wait a year, wait 2 years. There's no rush. Law schools are not going to go anywhere. I think we're going to get through this. I think we're going to get through this COVID, with some time. But if you are a person who is fearful of these different things and it's really weighing on you, I would reach out to me and we can talk about whether Steve, I think it's a person-to-person decision, and it's a hard one, and it's one you might want to only make with your parents and your therapist or your pastor. And it's if you can read my book and you can apply those principles and you're still kind of in question, then I think you're in a good position where there is no right or wrong. Like, you just got to decide for yourself whether we don't know what the world's going to be like for the next 3 years. And so you got to give yourself that grace, but you might have to take the bull by the horns and make a decision that you don't really know how it's going to affect things. Like me and my wife are going back to work. My wife's a nurse. How is that going to affect things? We don't know, but we're kind of going one day at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really true. It is an uncertain period, and there's no easy answers or necessarily right answers. But ultimately, I kind of agree with you on the idea that if you're not sure, you might want to wait, because once you start, it's kind of hard to stop, and you have the sunk cost of the tuition. Nobody is really going to value 1 year of law school or one semester of law school alone. No. You only make the payment back, the investment back, if you finish it out, and in most cases, ultimately pass the bar exam as well. But,
in one added benefit of, let's say there's people who are they're listening right now or in hearing this and thinking, I'm not sure whether I want to go to law, or specifically with this year related to COVID. If you sit out a year, you can retake the LSAT. And I know but it's hard to hear that, but it can give you a chance to boost your score, which can actually get you what you want, which is free money from law schools. So I will always counsel anyone, really consider taking another year or two off. Go get a job, go write a book, go do what you want to do, go tutor the LSAT like you do. I mean, it doesn't matter, but there's no rush to go to law school. There's no rush.
Yeah. And I agree with what you said. Also, I've been saying the same thing about if you can apply at the beginning of this fall to start fall 2021, and that's the position of most people in my courses. I think you have the chance to retake the LSAT this summer, apply at the beginning of this cycle when there's more money available. And then at least that way, when offers come back spring 2021, you'll have a much better sense of what was law school like for the previous class. Was it online? Was it in person? How much of that true typical 1L experience were they really getting?
It's funny because I think the people that are making these decisions are as clueless as we are. I mean, they're the people that are going to be making the decisions at Harvard, at Vanderbilt, at whatever law school. They're taking it one day at a time too. So you can't expect them to really know what's going on, and it could change at a moment's notice. Whether the president opens things up, whether your governor shuts things down. So it's a region by region, and it's a person by person, and I don't envy anyone for having to make it. It's a tough decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm wondering, and folks can feel free to ask questions in the chat too. Happy to work those into this conversation. But one thing I'm thinking about is just when students are talking to law schools, and law schools themselves don't even really know what's going to happen this fall, and they can't really make any promises. Can applicants really push them to make any guarantees? Or is it more just a sort of situation where you put down your deposit and what you get is what you get? It's really at their discretion based on what they're able to provide at the time.
What would you want them to guarantee?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that's going to vary from applicant to applicant, but maybe there's one applicant I've been in touch with a lot about this where due to a personal health situation, he didn't want to attend in person because of pre-existing conditions. He wanted to know that the online option would be guaranteed to him. And they were saying, we don't really know what we're going to be able to do if we can get that together in time, especially because the ABA has some requirements about how many credits have to be in person versus online.
Right.
So that becomes kind of tricky to navigate for them.
That's very tough. I don't know what I would tell that person to wait. Are you of the same mind, or have you?
Well, ultimately, the school, I kind of shamed the school a little bit online about this because they were saying we're going to keep the deposit and make no guarantees. And I was like, that could be an ADA violation if you're not honoring the person's medical situation.
That's correct.
They ultimately did come back and they said, actually, we will give the applicant, we'll make it right for them. We'll figure it out. They will be able to do at least first semester online. We'll give the appropriate accommodations in that specific situation. But I can imagine a lot of folks are like, do I want to travel halfway across the country if that state is open, but I personally don't feel comfortable?
I mean, it would even be tough for me. Do I want to go to school where all school's online? I mean, I'm a people person. I'm an extrovert. I want to get out there. And I think what a question you haven't asked that I wanted to address is, let's say that law school is, let's say for the next 2 years, it's all online. This makes the skills that I talk about in the book. And by the way, these skills are not like, I have no trade secrets. They're not like rocket science. They're really, really, really easy things you can do. But it makes them even more important. If you're already in an isolated situation, you're going to need to get out there and muck it up with these practicing attorneys more than ever. Because I went to law school and there was a lot of social interactions. And so we had, parties and everything like that. But if you go to law school in an age of COVID where you're doing all these online classes, if the tendency is just going to be to hole up in your library or in your bedroom and never come out, and you really need to get out there. You really need to get out to the county courthouses to meet the lawyers, to go to the law firms, to go to the events. And so I think it even takes on a more it's of much more importance to know how to make connections, how to make opportunities, and how to find the job you really want to do.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Yeah, as you said, geography matters less. Taking the initiative matters a lot more.
Right.
So what other issues or questions haven't we covered from your book that you think would be especially important for us to discuss at this moment?
Well, let's see. I think I'm of the opinion that before you decide to go to law school, you should really have shadowed like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 attorneys. So I'm really big on knowing, because how do you know what the practice of law is like if you've never watched or seen or felt anybody practice the law? If you've never gone to a courthouse, I keep saying the word courthouse. The reason I keep saying that is that's where lawyers work. That's where lawyers do the nitty gritty. That's where lawyers go on a daily basis. That's where I go practice, at the courthouse, in front of a judge, in front of juries. And so if someone, and this was me, I had no clue what lawyers did. I had no clue what attorneys did, and I still went to law school. It was a mistake to go in as unprepared as I did. And I just don't want anyone, you don't have to. You can go watch lawyers. You can talk to lawyers. You can figure out what they do on a daily basis. And you can know, and that way you can weigh the law up against any other profession that you're thinking about entering. So I'm very big. I think fewer people should go to law school, not to cut into your bottom line or anything like that. I think you're doing the Lord's work. But I think a lot of people are like I was in 2007, really confused about their future, have heard good things about law school. What the hell? Let's give it a shot. And I want to caution people and slow them down. I'm 36. I got nowhere to go. I got 2 small kids. I got a life of working and mortgages and baby diapers ahead of me. And so I'm on the other side. And I always caution people, you don't have to rush. You don't have to rush to get to the other side. Be patient. Take time away from law school. Boost your LSAT score. Get those scholarships up. And really play with some options that you have for yourself. So my one big takeaway is go slower than you think you need to go at the outset.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you, Andy. And I think that's as great a point to leave off as any. So I'll invite everyone to get a copy of Most Law Schools BS. It's available on Amazon, very reasonably priced, and it could save you a ton of money in the long run. So well worth the investment.
And one thing I'll say too, I give out my email in the book. It's info@andybrink.me, ANDYBRINK.me. Anyone can hit me up, ask a question, whatever they want to do. I'm happy. I have time to talk on the phone. I love to talk to people on the phone. That's it right there. So anyone can hit me up and we'll go from there.
Fantastic, Andy. That's very generous of you. I've put it in the chat.
Thank you.
I'll definitely encourage folks to reach out to you. It's a very generous offer.
Thanks, Steve.
Well, thank you for taking the time, Andy. Really appreciate it. Have a good one.
You got it. You too.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.